He loves us because of who we are and not what we do. And when we take upon the mindset that I have to do to get love, so if that's the concept that I have to do to love, then I can't do enough. I can't do enough. Now, somebody said recently, I don't know if you saw this on Facebook, this was pretty good. Somebody said, hey, I don't have to go to church to be saved. Well, here's how they responded. They say, well, you also don't have to live with your wife to be married. Isn't that right? It's true. You don't have to live with her, but it's not going to last. I love it. What a response. Shame prevents us from believing that he doesn't love us for who we are, but by what we do. My performance does not produce relationship. My relationship with him produces performance. And my capability for loving others is severely diminished when I do not love myself. So with that, let me read this to you. Where'd it go? A lady who was happily married, who was beautiful children, sitting on the beach, got their pictures, all that beautiful. Years later, to come to find out that the beautiful picture of the family on the beach, while they were all smiling, he was having an affair. The young lady says, I have a black and white photograph of myself leaning against a tree as a small girl. I found it in a box that contained all that's left from my childhood. Baby to wedding, decades of me all tucked away. My mom had just given me the box after cleaning out her attic. She was making space. I was now making my way through the making of me. The photo of me leaning on the tree holds my secrets as much as it holds what I looked like back then. I pulled it out and I put it on my dresser. And in that photo, I had long brown hair that appeared to have been kissed by the sun and made almost blonde around my face. It hung in a messy ringlets, sort of tangled in a pretty way. My skin was smooth, she says. My body was small. She said, I wasn't really smiling, however. I look like I'm lost in thought. No one could have possibly known how desperate I was to be rescued. I was practicing a skill no one had to teach me, hiding inside of myself. This photo was taken during the season of being abused by my grandmother's neighbor. He abused me, and he also tried to destroy my mind and my soul. He had taken scriptures and justified things so dark no little girl could ever, ever, ever have to endure them. He convinced me that I was a very, very awful child, and I believed him. So I despised myself. What he stole from me then wasn't just the innocence of beautiful imaginations and childhood simplicity. He yanked me into a pit of fear I still have to fight to stay out of this day. Fear that I'm not worthy of being loved. Fear that other people will use me and then toss me aside. Fear that worst case scenarios will always happen to me. I knew this wasn't happening to my other friends, so why was it happening to me? The freedom to be a playful child got stolen. I learned to think like an adult to try and save myself. By the time the abuse stopped, the carefree girl I once was had been placed by a cautious girl. And though I had experienced lots of counseling and healing, I still find myself assuming the absolutely worst might very well happen to me, and I am constantly bracing for impact. Other people assume bad things will never happen to them while I do the opposite. That's a connection I made at the grade table. But I found that sometimes if that happened, feels unchangeable, it can make the charge to change my perspective feel unreasonable. It's hard to have hopeful perspectives around permanent outcomes you absolutely didn't want. Forgiving can seem impossible when the other person has affected not just a season of our lives, but deeply affected us every day since. Sometimes the lingering after effects are the hardest to forgive. Maybe you wrestled through some of this with deeper hurts from your past. For me, as I mentioned, the after effects of my childhood abuse include my brain instantly jumping to extremes. Whenever something happens, I go to the extreme. It's become so deeply woven into my thinking that it's more instinct now than conscious choice. Even when I'm having fun, I find myself holding my breath, thinking of all that could possibly go wrong. I've imagined myself going to trial and eventually to jail for thousands of different accidents that I've tried to prevent. I've planned funerals for every loved one that ran late getting home. I planned funerals for those who didn't answer their phone when I repeatedly called them. I fretted over things that everyone around me was so sure wouldn't happen, and done so with such angst, I've made myself literally too sick to eat. She said just a few weeks ago on a beach vacation, my family decided to go through a coffee shop drive-through backward. Honest to goodness, how do my people even think things like that? But everyone was living their best life while I worked like a psychiatrist on overdrive inside of my head. I was reminding myself that no one was going to die, get arrested, or even have a picture show up on the evening news with words scrolling across the bottom on the screen that read, "Idiotic family causes irreparable damage to the neighborhood coffee shop." She goes, "It's ridiculous, but it's true." And finally, I sometimes wonder that my life would have been like it if I'd been able to have fun without cautiously holding my breath, without assuming all worst-case scenarios would be my scenarios. But in my defense, I am the girl who, the very first time I played golf, expressed my concern about the possibility of being hit by a fellow golfer's ball, and then actually it did happen. Even though the stats show that the chances of this are less than 1%, I, in fact, did get nailed in the back of my calf with a golf ball, having only been on the golf course for less than 1 hour in my entire life. I promise you, it seemed as if that ball had a laser focus on my leg, navigating through the woods, around trees, nailing me while I was looking for the ball that I had shanked earlier. I'm also the girl whose old car's metal bumper once got struck by lightning. And remember, my childhood home was hit by a drunk driver the day before one of my birthday parties. As a result, my party got canceled. So you can see my life seems to defy statistical probability, or at least I live in a world where things happen. Hard, unfair things happen to us all. Maybe on some level, we're all constantly bracing for impact. We just express it in different ways. What the man did to me seems impossibly fair. But so do so many other tragedies that shape those heavy things that happen within inside of me. I wonder what life might have been if I had lost a baby sister, or if maybe my dad hadn't stopped calling, or if I had lost my friend in a car, but she didn't, another to cancer, or a doctor, or this or that, and still another death by this and that. She goes on in this story, but she's saying, and what if another friend I trusted hadn't stolen all that money, or the addiction and the affair that hadn't happened? Every bit of it still makes me cry sometimes. She goes, it's just so unfair. Even worse, she says it's so unchangeable. And unchangeable can absolutely feel unforgivable. She goes, I grieve over it all. Grieving is dreaming in reverse. So when you think better days are ahead, you say things like, well, I dream of one day being a wife, a mom, a this, a that, a chef, a scientist, or I dream of one day opening my own coffee shop or writing a book or going back to school. But when you have, or when you are grieving over something or someone that has taken away, that was taken away, you wish you could go back in time. You dream in reverse. So instead of hoping for what one day will, instead of hoping for what will one day be, you long for a more innocent time when you live more unaware of tragedy. I don't know if that resonates with someone in our room tonight. When the pain seems never ending, when the outcome seems so final, and when they hurt not just to hurt you, but they hurt you and your family, when the reminders of the pain never end, when they destroyed my character, when they ruined an opportunity, when they took a life of someone I loved. These are realities of life that we live in. The purpose of our shame series is not to rubber stamp shame, but for every one of us in this room. We all have a picture. We've all had something that has affected us, something that has caused us to see things different, speak differently, act differently. Maybe to hide, maybe not to hide. We've all been there. We have the purpose of the shame series is not really, honestly, to expose every little bit of the tragedy, but more importantly, to expose the God that sees it and the God that wants to help you and the God that is able to heal. It would appear, and I don't understand this, I'm not a psychiatrist or a doctor when it comes to this, but what is it that when these tragedies happen, that suddenly I don't love myself because that? How do we get to that place where I don't love myself? But according to Mark chapter 12, 31, you must love others as you love yourself. Wait a minute, I just said I don't love myself. Maybe that's why some relationships are a little difficult. I'm going to talk to husbands and wives here for a minute, but there might be something there. I'm not trying to dig stuff up. I'm not trying to create some stuff, but it might be the reason why the relationship isn't as godly as it could be or as good as it could be. Brother Phil lived with us for a season, and he lived in our house, and he said, hey, one day when I get married, I want a marriage just like yours. He goes, you guys love each other, and you guys don't yell, and you guys don't this. And I'm like, well, you're not home all the time. I mean, I said, no. But here's the thing, is that if this is good, this is going to be good. And when this isn't good, this probably isn't good either. Now, that's just not a cover statement, because sometimes we get an argument. I'm not arguing with God, but sometimes if there's an argument here, doesn't mean that this is bad. What I'm saying is, if this is a constant not good, this is probably not good. Are we okay? The Message Bible, which I don't normally ask you to read from, but it says, love others as well as you love yourself. Hey, at least it didn't say that he turned wine into wine coolers, so I thank God for that. The Easy to Read Bible says, love your neighbor the same as you love yourself. Contemporary says, love others as much as you love yourself. Loving others is a fundamental element of the revival that we need to hear. Do you know, and I think you all know this, is that most of our guests that come in here, the first thing that they say is they feel the love. They feel the love. I feel like AGC went through a season where, and I'm not picking on any pastors or anything like that, but I really feel like there may have been a season that maybe we didn't have the love here. But I do say this, and I will say this, and I'm asking us that we're going to continue to pray, and we're going to ask God to, as soon as they walk through these doors, or even before that, is that that God would begin to lead them and draw them, and He would put His long arms of mercy around them, and they feel that. Does she want to? She can come up here and she can preach with me. I'll hold her. Oh, I remember taking Dylan out. Pray, church, pray. If my inability to let God help me to love myself hinders His ability to love others through me, my shame then becomes an impassable roadblock to revival. Let me say that again. If my inability to let God help me love myself, and it hinders His ability, that I become a roadblock in that process. Let's talk about that for a moment. Let's talk about that. We're not talking about just someone having a bad day. Every now and then somebody has a bad. We have that. Everybody in this room has had a bad day, right? We have this, but I'm not talking about bad day. I'm just talking about consistent. I'm talking about consistent, and when. This is not superficial, but literally, you can have the Holy Ghost and have the joy of the Lord, and you can have an exciting life. You can have an exciting life, but somehow, some way, you've got to believe that, and you've got to step out of the shame, and you've got to step out of that stuff that has happened, and you've got to forgive them, and you've got to forgive yourself. You've got to fall in love with yourself, and I promise you, the outlook will be better. What needs to be restored? I got in this last week, and we'll just go just a couple more minutes, but we talked about what needs to be restored. Our relationship with Him, the way it was originally designed. I don't know what your relationship is like with God, but the only way that I can compare it is Paul says that marriage is a lot like your relationship with Christ. Man shall leave mother and father, shall cling to man shall leave mother and father and cling to his wife, and they two shall become one flesh. And he says, this is a mystery, but I say this is Christ and the church. What is that becoming one look like with Christ? What is that relationship? Do you think about Him? Do you talk to Him? Do you love Him? When I was walking with my disciple this morning, he could only go 2 laps. He had a doctor's appointment, and I went 2 more, and mine, that's 3.5 miles. And as I was walking, and I was going, God, I want to let you know that I love you, and I need you. And God, you this was my prayer. I said, we're supposed to be salt. I said, sprinkle. This is just me. This is how I pray. I said, God, sprinkle your salt on me, not my salt. I want to be your salt. I want to love. I want people to know that I have been with you. And then I made a mistake today. I made a mistake. I beat myself up. I made a mistake. I apologized to the other person. I said, look, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm ignorant. Don't beat yourself up. God, remember the person that just made a mistake. Remember this morning when I said I love you? I still do. I just made a mistake. I'm sorry. And you move on. We are, as He brings us out and we are more like Him, we are to not only to be more like him, but then less like the world. Let me go back to my letter just for a moment from the lady. The lady was very young when she got abused, when she was abused. And when you're a young lady, that puts you in a situation that you were not designed to be in. That's causing you to think about things you're not supposed to be thinking about right then. That's reserved for marriage and an adult, right? That's reserved for marriage, and so and suddenly, what do you do if that has happened? First of all, you have to understand that, especially if it happened to you, it's not your fault. And it's not your fault. And usually what happens in those situations when you have someone who does that, they want you to think it's your fault. And they'll do whatever it takes to be a place of a bully, or they'll do whatever they can to try to control you and control that situation. And so it just so happens that this story and this lady's story does resonate with some of us. You don't have to stay there. You don't have to stay there in the shame. You don't have to stay there thinking that's your fault. You don't have to stay there and have your life altered. You do not have to stay there. Staying there, and I'm not just sweeping it on the carpet, but it is a choice. It may be a very difficult choice, and I'm not making light of it. I'm sure it's probably going to be anguishing, and I've got to talk about it. I've got to have counselors, and I got to do that, and that's okay too. But regardless, you don't have to stay there, because if that was taken from you, then what God can put in you is far greater than what you've lost. I beseech you, therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God, that ye present your bodies a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable unto God, which is your reasonable service. And be not conformed to this world, but be ye metamorphosed, or be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind, that ye may prove. I have to be translated. I have to be transformed. I have to be changed. I've got to. What do you do when my mind, what do you do when that's all I'm thinking about is the shame? And what do I do when that's all I see is the shame? I have to trust God, and I have to renew my mind. Well, Pastor, that sounds just like pretty easy. No, it's not. It's not. The purpose of the shame series is so you can hear the word of the Lord, hear him, trust him, walk with him, pray with him. Talk to Pastor, talk to me. Let's talk about that if we need to get a counselor involved. The men that I mentioned, they're not posting it on the internet. They're not saying, "Look who I'm meeting on Facebook today." This is private. This is to help people. Why do we need to conform to his image? Because as a man thinks in his heart, so is he. We're wanting a change of heart so that we have a change of mind. Change of heart, change of mind. Thoughts produce actions. Wrong thinking equal wrong actions. My feelings about myself produce wrong thoughts about myself. Thus, I can't do the will of God. So, I'm done for tonight. What is hindering us? What is keeping us to being the very best that we can be? Do you have the courage? Will you be transformed? Will you allow that transforming to take place? Will you allow him to enable you to do things you've never done and to step out of that. Don't allow that what happened back there to define you. Don't allow that. As a matter of fact, here's what happens is sometimes if that has happened, what I've seen as young ladies get very promiscuous then, and then start looking at that, start going that way. And again, I'm just trying to pastor tonight. That has to be turned around. You have to understand that what that was done was not supposed to happen. That's for husband and wife, not boyfriend and girlfriend. You know, I don't know, I don't know if you've been, but I was always taught that there was a transfer of spirits. Well, I don't necessarily know if I believe that. I believe there can be a transfer of spirits. But here's the reality, is what was given to me was that, hey, you know, you don't want to do that because, no, here's what it is. It's going to mess up your mind. It's going to mess up your life. It's going to, The reality is that we remain pure. We remain pure, and then on the wedding night, that's where you can give your husband a gift or your wife a gift and say, I've kept myself for you. That is a wedding gift. But I'm also very well aware that we live in a world that doesn't preach that, doesn't teach that. The top 40 songs, I don't even know what the lyrics are of the top. Don't even go look at it. I was going to preach a message, I think it was even last year, I was going to talk about the top 40, and so I was going to look at the top 40 songs, and I thought, oh my word, I don't listen to it anymore. But the nasty in your face just. And so if I'm listening to that, what are we putting into our spirit? That I do agree with. What are we listening to, right? If we're watching TV shows where everybody's sleeping with everybody and that's why I'm against that stuff. Or if I'm listening to a top 40 songs and it talks about this and blank and blank. I'm just being honest. Think about it. If you're already struggling, that ain't going to help you. We want to become in his image and in his character. I don't want to be Snoop Dogg. Yo. I don't. I want to be Rodney Jesus Christ. I want to be more like him. And how do I become more like him? I've got to read his word. I've got to pray to him. I got to talk to him. I got to spend time with him. And by the way, you're going to get this on Wednesday to help you because you're not getting this on Thursday and Friday and Saturday, right? You're surely not getting it out there. So why don't we stand? It's 8:30. Parents, you just have to understand. I feel like it's all holds. No holds barred is what it is. I guess what I'm trying to do is I don't want to give you sweet bread and tickle your fancy and just come up with. I read something the other day is how do you know? I can't remember how it was said, but it was look, if we want a crowd, if you want a crowd, you know how you preach to a crowd? You become Joel Osteen. If you want a Joel Osteen, then go see Joel Osteen. Whatever. I'm not going to get my teeth whitened, and I'm not going to put fake hair, and I'm not going to just go, right? Osteen's dad was a different story, but I'm talking, if you listen to him preach, it's just simply God loves you, he's going to bless you, and y'all going to just be happy. It's going to be okay. That's it. Well, on this pulpit, it's going to be okay if you just trust God. It's going to be okay if you just trust it, but I got to do it His way. I got to do it His way. Come on, let's thank the Lord. I got to do it His way. God, we love you. We thank you, Lord, for your goodness and grace. We bless you. I want to be more like you. I want to be in character. I want to have a metamorphosis, oh God. I want to break out and be more, God, just like you. In Jesus' name. God bless you. Shake hands. Be friendly. We'll see you this week. Tomorrow, Golden Nuggets. Cast down those imaginations.